Hey, it's Trey the Gatorboy, and welcome back to the Gatorboy's Guide to Becoming a Bakugan Pro. And welcome to part 3, where I actually go through how to actually go about building your first deck, or just any deck in general. Now, there's just a few things to go over in terms of building a deck. So the very first thing to think about before doing any research on what Bakugan to actually run in your deck is actually what the structure of your deck will be. For example, like what factions you want in your deck. The reason why I say focus on building your deck before you choose what Bakugan you actually want to play in the deck is because you don't want to get a bunch of Bakugan for your deck and then suddenly decide that you don't like the play style all of a sudden. So the general deck construction is about 9 to 12 0 to 1 cost action or hero cards, then 3 to 6 0 to 4 cost flip cards, then 6 to 9 of any cost evolution cards, because those evolution cards, it doesn't really matter when it comes down to it. You just want to be able to play them to make your Bakugan stronger. And then 3 to 9 2-cost action slash hero cards, about maybe 6 3-cost action or hero cards, and then 3 to 6 4 and higher cost action or hero cards. Now, the reason why I say this specific number for each category is purely so that you have the most consistent flow in terms of drawing and getting the cards you need as the game goes on. In your very first hand, you want to make sure that you can play cards as soon as possible just to get that competitive edge over your opponent. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of time to really work with Baku Gear yet since they just came out, but I would say you would want probably 3 to 6 of those as well. It doesn't matter what the cost of it is for the most part, but you would want maybe like 2 low cost ones, then 2 medium cost ones, and maybe 2 high cost ones, or 1 1 1, or just any in that order. You don't need the full 6. And that is one thing I want to exaggerate. You do not need to follow this guideline. This is just to help you build your first deck, or maybe your second deck, or maybe just get a feel for consistency in your deck. So in the Bakugan TCG, your deck must not exceed or go below 40 total cards. As mentioned in the previous video, your deck is your life total. I would like to go over quite a few of the staples that you might want to run in your deck. So staples are cards that pretty much you want to run in the deck if you're running a certain type. For Pyrus, Quickfire is free to play. It lets you deal 1 attack to your opponent while also allowing you to re-roll your Bakugan, which is really useful if you want to get either a better core or if you miss the roll altogether. The next card I'd like to talk about for Pyrus is Song of Fire. Song of Fire is really good, really freaking good. So what happens is you pay 3 energy, and then you use it to get 5 temporary energy, which goes away at the end of the turn. Now you might be wondering, why would anyone want to do that? Well, for 5 cost cards, that is amazing, because you can play any of your 5 cost cards on turn 3, which can be very, very hard for your opponent to deal with early on in the game. Additionally, there's another card which is very similar to this called Super Fuel. Now, many people would consider this also a Pyrus staple. Now, the reason why I personally don't like Super Fuel is because it's expensive. It's like upper $30 range right now, and it's honestly not worth the price in my opinion. You can play the game without a $30 card in your deck, especially without 3 $30 cards in your deck. Fireball is a 1-cost card, and what it does is it powers up your Bakugan's attack power so that when you do win the battle, you actually get to deal more damage to your opponent. Sifting Ashes is a 1-cost card that lets you draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. Now this is very important because being able to draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards, you get 2 cards from the top of your deck that you might actually need while discarding 2 cards that you just didn't need. It's essentially a combo starter, so it does make you lose 2 life. However, by losing 2 life, you're also gaining 2 cards in your hand that you can use to beat your opponent. And lastly, one more card before I go on to the next faction is called Fierce Termination. Now, Fierce Termination is actually a flip card that's specifically for Pyrus decks, and what it does is if you have no cards in your hand and you flip it from the top of your deck after taking damage, then you can play it for free, absolutely free, whereas normally it would cost 4, or if you play Block Outsiders, you're paying 3, but you don't get even a chance to play it for free. So overall, Fierce Termination's just better. If you want, you can actually play both Fierce Termination and Block Outsiders, and you can essentially just have extra flip cards in your deck, which is a great idea. However, if you're playing multiple factions, then you might want to actually consider playing the other faction's version of Fierce Termination, which uses another type of special effect to also be able to play it for free. In Aquos, there's quite a few great cards that literally none of the other factions have that really boost the B power quite a bit. Now, the first one is Tides. Tides cost only 1 energy, and it gives you plus 200. Now, that might not seem like a whole lot. However, if you play another card before Tides, then you can actually get 400 B power out of it. And the same thing with Wave Slash, which is the next one I want to talk about, which gives you plus 300, but if you play a card before it, you get plus 1000 for only 3 energy, which is a massive boost for the amount of energy. Now you may be wondering, how can I get that without having to spend more mana beforehand? Well, you can play either Quickfire, which I mentioned before, which is free, or you can play a different card for the Aquos faction called Greater Water Boost, which gives you a plus 100 for free. The next card I would like to mention is called Inspire. Inspire is a 1 cost, you gain 1 attack power on a Bakugan, and then you get to draw a card. Now, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's a 1 cost, draw 1. It's really pretty useful in the end because in a pinch you might really just need that 1 extra card to draw, and you don't really want to draw 2 with your Sifting Ashes. You just want to get 1 card out of it, and honestly, it's really useful in many scenarios. If you're looking for an alternative to Inspire, there's another one that's really good called Deep Dive, which actually gives you a reroll, kind of like how Quickfire does. Next, we have Flooding Waters. Flooding Waters is a very cool action card with a really big drawback. Flooding Waters, as you can see, Flooding Waters has plus 200 B power for every Aquos Bakugan on your team. However, because Aquos does not have access to a free flip card, it creates quite a big drawback in that you have to play only Aquos. But plus 600 B power for 1 cost is insane. It's so useful, and it does add quite a bit of like an edge to just playing Aquos. I personally haven't tried it, but I do know that it's a pretty big thing, and it can really just throw your opponent off pretty easily just by throwing that out. So now there's 2 last cards that I'd like to mention for Aquos. There's Absorb, and there's Blinding Ink. So both of them will negate an action card. Now, essentially, what this does is it pretty much prevents your opponent from doing what they wanted to do. So, say you have the advantage right away, so then they try to boost their guy. You can just negate it, and then they can't do anything about it. You just throw away their card. The cool thing with Absorb, however, is that you actually get to copy that effect and use it for yourself, which is really, really devastating to your opponent if they're doing something really good. When it comes to Aurelus, Aurelus is a lot more unique in their staples. So Aurelus mainly works well with other factions in terms of what they actually get. So Liquid Darts is another Aquos card, but what it does is you can play it for 1 cost like a Tides, and it gives you the 400 right away. You don't have to play anything before it, it just right away gives you the 400 B power. Wildfire works in a very similar way as well. It only costs 3 and it increases from 400 all the way to 800 B power just for having an Aurelus Bakugan on your team. And Lava Spray is a 1 cost card, which is kind of like Fireball, except it gives you plus 1 more attack power just for having an Aurelus Bakugan on your team. And the last one I would like to talk about is called Body Breaker. Now, Body Breaker is really, really cool. It has an effect called Battle Mastery, where you can either choose to give plus 300 B power, or you can give attack power. There is one more Aurelus staple, but I can't really recommend it right now because it's extremely hard to find. It's the hero card Magnus Living Arm of Tico. Very long name, and it's just too good because it literally makes Body Breaker do both of those effects, as well as the other Battle Mastery cards. But Body Breaker really is like the important one here. So when it comes to Chaos, Chaos is a little bit different in terms of the other staples. So there is actually a flip card called Confuse. Now the reason why Confuse is a staple is that Flaming Fists and Magic Shields are some of the most devastating cores right now. They just destroy you if they if they go off. Light's Courage is a 2-cost action card, and if you have, it's pretty much the same thing as Wildfire, except you have to have Domination, which means that you have to have the most Baku cores on your side of the field. Bone Defense is really good. It's only a 3-cost plus 700, which is really powerful. Especially if you just don't have anything else to play, you can just tap 3 energy and just throw out a Bone Defense and you're pretty much good for the turn if they have no other response. Next, we have Holy Flame and Super Shot. So basically, you might see Holy Flame and think that that's just way better. However, your Bakugan must be holding a green fist for it to get that extra effect. So unless you're playing a Bakugan that actually uses green fists, you're not really going to have a good time with this card other than just using the same effect as Super Shot. But if you want the opportunity to use a Green Fist Bakugan on your team, you might as well just throw in a Holy Flame then, because it literally isn't that much different from Super Shot. It doesn't ruin your chances of winning if you could have used Super Shot, but instead you used Holy Flame instead. They are pretty much the same card, just Holy Flame has that extra bonus if you happen to grab a Green Fist. The last card that I'd like to talk about for Chaos is called Stand Together. It's another one of those really cool free flip cards that actually will stop any non-Chaos attack as long as your field has the most cores. There are many ways to achieve having more cores than your opponent other than just winning battles. There's cards like Consort, which isn't exactly a staple, but it could be really useful to add to your deck if you just want some extra beef in your deck in order to be able to make those domination effects go through. Next, we have Ventus. So Ventus has quite a few cards like Toxify, which is another free card, which you have to remember with Ventus, it's very hard to really determine what is necessary for the deck because they have so many small things that just constantly debuff your opponent's Bakugan. Toxify will remove their attack power, which is really useful if you're facing certain decks that really utilize attack. The next thing is called Nature's Power, which only costs 1, and it decreases any non-Chaos Bakugan's B power by 500. I'm personally not a fan of Nature's Power purely because it has to be a non-Ventus Bakugan. It's essentially completely worthless if your opponent's playing mono green. So Nature's Power really isn't that good, but many people would say it's better to run it than to not run it. Next, we have Turn to Energy. This one, I believe, is a pure staple. So literally, it's just you pay 2 energy and you set it down as energy. So you may be wondering, why would I even want to do that? Even if you might cost yourself a win by doing this, it'll at least give you 1 extra mana over your opponent. So that's really useful in the long run because you'll be able to get to your higher cost cards faster, or even you'll be able to play multiple cards in one turn faster than your opponent will. Now, the next card I'd like to talk about for Ventus is Cocoon Shield. Cocoon Shield is very useful because if you have like a lower B power Bakugan on your team, then you can just throw down a Cocoon Shield and instantly, until the end of turn, their B power is at 1000, which is really useful if you have no other response to what they're doing, and it can just really help out in the end. Now I'd like to talk about Winton Styles. Winton Styles is a 4-cost hero card that whenever you open a Bakugan on a Baku core, you can energize the top card of your deck. Now, you might wonder, well, why would I want to do that? What if I want that card? Well, in the end, like I was saying with Turn to Energy, it's just better to be able to get at a greater advantage than your opponent, especially in Ventus decks. You want to have that extra energy just to be able to bash your opponent with as many effects as possible in one turn. Next, I'd like to talk about Tiger Reflex. Tiger Reflex is another one of those really cool free flip cards that you can get just by having the most energy. Completely free as long as you can keep the ramp up. A very, very versatile, very useful card, as you can see. The last card I'd like to talk about, which is actually a newer card and really hard to find, Tusk Guard. Now, Tusk Guard is a 6-cost card. While you may be wondering why would you even recommend that, well, its other effect is that if you play a 5-cost card, you can play it for free. You may play Tusk Guard for free. Now, a -800 for 6 cost may not be as good. A -800B card for free is even better, especially when a lot of the cards you're going to be playing in Ventus are higher energy anyways because you're ramping. This pairs very well with cards like Maximus Dragonoid. He is a 5-cost card, which you can actually play for free just by having 3 Baku cores. So as you can imagine, you can get extra Baku cores with Chaos cards, and then you can play Maximus Dragonoid for free, and then you can play Tusk Guard for free as kind of like a triple combo, and you can just really surprise your opponent with that one. And now lastly, Darkus. There are 4 that I would like to talk about. Shade Blade is free, and it gives +2 attack. It's really useful in Pyrus Darkest decks because you can just play, if you have 3 of those in your hand, you can just play all 3 of them, and you can just really buff the attack power of your Bakugan, and since Darkest and Pyrus are very heavily attack based, and also have some really good B power boosting effects, you can really just destroy your opponent really fast. The next card is called Might of Darkness, which is actually in here for a very similar reason. It gives +500 B power and attack power and some attack power, and pretty much it's really inexpensive to play. It's only 3 cost, and it's just really powerful because it can really buff up your Bakugan and deal damage to your opponent at the same time. Now, there's Stone Skin as well, which is a 3-cost card with only +200B, but you can also discard a card to make Stone Skin give +800B power. I personally like it a lot. I don't know how many people play it as a staple, but I personally love playing it. The last card I want to talk about, it's an expensive card, but it's not super fuel expensive. Pact of Darkness. Now, if you're playing Darkest, you should play Pact of Darkness. It's a $15 to $20 card right now. I know, I literally just went on that rant about not playing super expensive cards, but with Darkest, this card is amazing. It's literally a flip card that you can play for free just by discarding a card. Literally nothing wrong with that at all. This guide is really just to help you understand how to go about starting your first deck, and I really think that these cards, if you can work with these cards right here, these ones will help you a lot, at least in the long run, because this will already help you get most of your deck built. And just remember, your deck must be exactly 40 cards. So thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and feel free to click that bell notification icon if you'd like to be notified when the next video comes out, because the next video will actually go through deciding which Bakugan to play. Now, the reason I didn't go through that in this video is because picking out your Bakugan is much more than just building your deck. It really changes everything about what you're truly trying to achieve while playing your deck. So while you might play, now like the Auralist cards for example, you pretty much want to play those with other colors so that you can play the other, the Liquid Darts and the Wildfire, Lava Spray, stuff like that. And there's certain cards that work better with other factions. You just have to play and test, and that's really where the true deck building comes in. There's dual faction cards coming out in the next set, and there's just a lot to look forward to. That's really the fun part. That's why I just made this a guideline for just building the deck. I really want to leave the creative freedom up to you guys. I just wanted to present the staples and what you need to build the deck, and just a general guideline of how you can go about doing that without having an inconsistent and unfun deck. So just again, I'd like to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.